Hello, and welcome back to Lights Out, your virtual campfire. I'm your hostess with the mostest ghosties, Sylvia Schultz. In this episode, we're going to take a look at one of the most well-documented cases of spirit possession in American history. So grab your Ouija board, light a candle for ambiance, and let's go Lights Out. The world of the paranormal is full of unexplainable mysteries. Some places are haunted because of a murder or other violence. There's usually a backstory to a haunting. But sometimes a haunting arises just out of daily life. Something sort of like this happened in Watseka, Illinois in 1877. We'll hear the whole story of Mary Roff and Lurancy Vennum in a bit, but here is the story in a nutshell. Lurancy Vennum was born in 1864 near Watseka. In the summer of 1877, she suffered a series of what seemed to be epileptic fits. During these fits, she seemed to be possessed by several different spirits, one of which was a teenage girl named Mary Roff. This was interesting because the Roff family also lived in Watseka. Mary Roff had died at the age of 19 in 1865, after suffering from similar fits. Lurancy's case came to the attention of Asa Roff, Mary's father. E.W. Stevens, a physician who was versed in spiritualism, suggested to Lurancy that she choose one of these spirits to control her. The spirit of Mary Roff volunteered to do it, and for the next 10 months, Lurancy Vennum was allegedly possessed by the spirit of Mary Roff. Asa took the girl to the Roff home, where she lived as Mary during her possession. Mary explained that this was done to give Lurancy's spirit, in heaven, a chance to heal from her illness. So this isn't really a haunting, but it does involve the supernatural. When I got the chance to visit the Roff home in Watseka, I was intrigued, but I wasn't really expecting to get much in the way of paranormal action. I couldn't have been more wrong. We were first treated to a history of the house and the possession case. To be honest, there was much more to the history than even I knew.
This house was built in 1868. It's was built by the Roff family, a family of spiritualists. And what makes this house famous primarily is that a possession supposedly took place here in 1878. These spiritualists had a daughter who died under strange circumstances and was sick her whole life. And then for 10 years they practiced spiritualism in this house, trying to get in contact with her. And then 10 years into it, the girl across town supposedly becomes possessed by her spirit and then moves into this house with them and stays here for 100 days. There's other very interesting people who have owned and lived in this house. One was a federal judge named Judge Raymond. He owned this house from 1912 to 1939. And then his daughter, stepdaughter, I find her very fascinating. She owned this house from 1939 until 1961. Her name was Catherine Clifton. She, at the age of 40, came into land that was the size of Rhode Island and was divided into 36 farms. So she was essentially a single independent woman in 1939, at the age of 40, who had to manage 36 farms and 36 men on those 36 farms. To do so, to make sure they weren't lying to her and taking advantage of her, and to manage her wealth, she learned how to fly, built a hangar on the property, bought an airplane, and at the crack of dawn every morning, she would get in her plane and fly over her 36 farms and make sure that no one was taking advantage of them, and to make sure that it was being run the way it needed to be run. I find her to be a fascinating character in the history of this home, and an inspiring one as well. And occasionally there have been hints, or more than hints, of her presence in the home during investigations or references to her. So I know that the history of the Watseka Wonder Story and the possession is very important, but I think it's also important to keep in mind that other people lived here as well, and their histories might be imprinted on this as well. To tell you, this house was built in 1868, between 1865 and 1868, by a family of spiritualists named the Roff family. And this house was built in a Victorian Italianate style. So like the tall arched windows at the front, the very elongated features, were typical of what they were trying to reproduce was an Italian villa, as seen through the lens of American design and British design at the time. And this family, I believe, wanted to create a house like this because they had a very different view of the world. As I said, they had a daughter named Mary Roff, who was sick her entire life. From the time she was 6 months old until the time she died when she was 18 and a half. She was ill with something that looked a lot like someone having seizures. At first they'd start, when she was 6 months old, they started, and it would happen once every few months. And then as she grew older, it became more frequent, once a month, then once a week, then multiple times a week. At the time, as you can imagine, let's say she was epileptic. As you can imagine, nobody would have an answer for that. They took her to every doctor that they could. Nobody could provide any kind of reasonable diagnosis or treatment for it. As you can imagine, in the time period of the 1850s and 1860s, a lot of that was attributed to, whatever's going on with her must be religious in nature, must have some kind of like demonic component. That it's not simply just an illness, but it's something more. She was put in an asylum in Peoria for a time. During one of these fits or seizures, she became clairvoyant, and she was able to read books that were closed or read envelopes that were sealed. And there's, in the eyewitness account of this story, there's extensive detail of how this played out and how the family experimented with it to see if she was faking it or what she was doing. That was toward the end of her life, around 17, and she went on to die when she was 18 and a half. In that same scenario where she went through this clairvoyant state, they blindfolded her, and she could supposedly walk around and do anything that she needed to while completely blindfolded and heavily blindfolded, as if she carried on activities as if she had sight. She went on, they gave her an encyclopedia at one point, and she opened up the encyclopedia while blindfolded, scanned down through the index until she came to the entry for blood, opened it up to the page for blood, and then began reading the dictionary or the encyclopedia entry for blood at the time. So, kind of creepy. And something that could not be explained is like, oh, she was epileptic and nobody knew how to deal with it. Right? She died in the middle of one of these fits or seizures or episodes when she was 18 and a half. So she dies. That same month, they buy this property. It was 80 acres, stretching. So they were buying farmland and stretching around the bend and out into the country. And then they began building this house. So at some point over those 3 years, between 1865 and 1868, they finished this house. The mother and father, Mary's mother and father, move in here. They give or sell the family home to the sister Minerva, and she stays there. They come here. At some point, they convert to spiritualism because they believe that what they had seen go on with their daughter had an explanation that went beyond just, medical or psychological or anything didn't even exist. Just, it didn't have a medical explanation what they had witnessed. And they thought that more of a spiritual explanation is, and for 10 years, from 1868 to 1877, they practiced spiritualism in this home, which you can imagine. It's kind of like the activities that you want to carry out, right? Reaching out to see if there's something else in the world, seeing something else beyond this thin veil between us and some other side. I see this house as basically a monument to spiritualism and a monument to this kind of work, that people come here looking for answers, and have since the very beginning, looking for answers of, is there something else out there? Can I communicate with someone I've lost? Can I communicate with someone on some other side? So they spent 10 years here doing that. And in June of 1877, a girl named Lurancy Vennum on the other side of town begins having these same kind of symptoms as their daughter had. But it's more violent. And she takes on different personalities that will just come and go out of her. The parents, it's kind of like a smaller, poorer family. And so they're like small farmers, and so they don't know what to do with her. They take her out of school. They keep her locked in her room, keep her tied to her bed. And they just don't know what to do. Same kind of scenario, that there's doctors don't know what to do to help her. Religious people in town start saying that that girl should be put in an asylum. We don't know what's going on with her. Can't be angelic. It must be demonic, and get her out of town. So this goes on for 7 months, and in January of 1878, the Roff family, the mother and father here, asked to meet with the Vennums, because what they had heard was going on about, what they had heard sounded a lot like what had gone on with their daughter. And they meet with the Vennums on January 31st, and it's actually Mr. Roff and a spiritualist doctor named E.W. Stevens. And they meet with the Vennums, and during that time, the daughter Lurancy comes downstairs, and she takes on 3 different personalities. 2 of the personalities I kind of described as like cranky old people. I don't know if you call them the evil spirit, but they're like cranky old people. And then the third claims to be the daughter Mary, who then goes on to explain that this girl Lurancy had something terribly wrong with her soul, and the angels of heaven had taken it up to heaven for it to be cleansed. And that while a body is empty of a soul, anything can pour into it. Anything can come into it. And usually it would be something bad and not good. And that, she says, is the explanation for why this is happening to their daughter Lurancy. She also goes on to ask about the family, ask about her, her mother and her sister and other family members, and it's like suddenly this long lost reunion. At the end of the evening, Mr. Vennum and the spiritualist doctor leave. They think it's going to be like the other cases with this girl, that Mary will disappear and another spirit will come in and it'll go back and forth, and it'll continue as it did before. But the next day, the girl wakes up and she says, "I'm Mary Roff, and I want to go home and be with my family." This goes on for a week, and then they call the Roffs back, and they say, this is the most stable week she's had in 7 months, and she keeps insisting that she wants to go home, and this is not her home. But and we're open to that, because we've tried everything, we don't know what to do to help her, and we were going to send her to an asylum. So if this would actually help her, we'd be happy to try this out and see. So they agree, and on February 8th or 9th of 1878, she comes to this home as Mary Roff, their dead daughter, and lives here with the Roff family for 100 days. She has people fully convinced that she's their dead daughter, and for the Roff family, that she's their dead daughter, and she knows things that They claim she knows things that only the daughter would know, things that happened back in the 1850s, the 1860s, and that it was as if they had their daughter back with them. She came here in the dead of winter, in February 1878, and she left in May, kind of spring and rebirth. She announced toward the end of her time here that, look, she said from the beginning, I can only stay here for so long. Mary said, they've asked me to stay in this body while her soul is being cleansed to protect her body and to keep other things out of it. But at some point, I'm going to have to leave and let her come back and live out her life. So they actually set a date, the time of when this would happen, and so they could actually say their goodbyes to each other. And they choose the date of May 21st. And here in this front parlor, the mother says goodbye to her daughter, Mary. And then the father takes her downtown, or takes her over to the other house, where they say goodbye to Minerva, the sister. And then he takes her over to her parents and drops her off there. And it's there that Lurancy comes back into herself and goes back to living out her life. Long Beach, California, and lived the rest of her life out there. And like I said, died when she was 91 years old. She would occasionally come back and visit with the Roff family. And she told them during one of those visits that during the birth of her first child, that Mary came back to her and relieved her of the pain of childbirth through her intervention. And she said that Mary continued having a certain amount of contact with her throughout her life. And that's written in a 30-year anniversary edition of the Watseka Wonder Story that was published in 1908. And in that version, the daughter Minerva, Mary's sister, wrote a letter explaining these things and said that she still believes then, 30 years afterwards, that everything written in the story was true. So I see this as a story of healing, not so much like something like The Exorcist, but more like, it's a possession of healing. That through this possession, through this interaction, the Roff family were able to live 100 days with their daughter when she stayed in perfect mental and physical health in a way that they never did when she was alive. Then for the Vennum family, they were able to recapture their daughter and allow her to live the rest of her life.
Then we were given the run of the house. Since there were so many of us traipsing around the place, it was very difficult to get any good EVPs or any other evidence. An investigator, Angie, and I did have an interesting experience in Mr. Roff's bedroom. Angie and I were sitting on the bed, just trading ghost stories back and forth, like you do, and from behind me, I heard a latch click.
Ambience. I was 6 months pregnant, so my husband put this somewhere, I forget where, in between the borders between Scotland and England, up north there. And it opened up. It was locked.
Yeah, I just heard the latch go.
Yeah, let me check something else. Maybe it was the bathroom. Is the bathroom open?
What?
No,
It's open.
Nobody's there. The door opened by itself.
No.
And it's not the bathroom, it's a closet.
Yeah.
This open by itself?
No,
Yes, this was latched, and we're sitting here talking, and we heard the latch spring, and it,
Yeah.
I heard that latch
No
go.
indicators, though. We heard it. I thought it was, and that's why I went to look. Maybe it was the bathroom.
Yeah, we thought maybe that it was back pressure
This was
from...
latched,
Yeah.
and you heard.
Yeah.
We heard click.
Click, and then it opened just a wee bit.
Yeah, that's the noise we heard. That noise right
there.
there.
To come over here.
Sometimes when you're just chatting and stuff like that, that's when stuff will start happening. I've noticed that. It's kind of, we'll be sitting there asking all these deep questions and you don't get anything, and then we're just chatting and stuff happens.
We were just saying, To be exact, isn't it interesting when something does happen, you're alone, you're like, well,
Yeah.
I don't have a witness, and all of a sudden, we were here,
Right.
and it's getting chills.
Awesome.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
If we
Very
weren't, I would have believed it.
I know, me neither.
It's so nice. It's just,
As I wandered through the house, I had an idea. Check this out. I knew that the Roffs held many, many seances in the house. They were avid spiritualists. It occurred to me that the Roff home would be a perfect place to try the Victorian seance technique of table tipping. The seances were held in the front parlor, so that's where I headed. I grabbed a few other investigators, and we started our experiment. What happened was extraordinary. Okay, so the way this works is we have our fingertips on the table, like that. And we concentrate and we ask the spirits to come and help us tip the table. And without anybody putting their knees underneath it or anything, the table is supposed to vibrate and then tip one way or the other. It doesn't matter which way. That's all we're doing is feeding our energy in through the table and asking the spirits to come and help give their energy so that they move the table, and it usually tips.
If I'm hearing you right, if we do all that, it tips.
That
Say
means-
if he was saying something, then this would in fact tip
Exactly, yeah.
to him.
Well, it tips in any direction it wants.
Oh, okay. Alright.
Not necessarily towards a certain person.
Okay.
It'll just tip.
Just
So you
tip.
might feel it vibrate. If we're lucky, we'll actually feel it tip, but if we feel it vibrate, I will be very, very happy. So. Okay. So, what I would love for everyone to do right now is just take your hands and bring them together and feel that energy between your palms. Everyone has the electrical energy running through them, and you can actually feel it. Kind of bounce your hands together a little bit and feel that wad of energy between your fingertips, between your palms. That's what we're going to be working with, that life energy.
here she is.
Okay, there we go. There we go.
You want to take over, Christine?
Sure, what do you guys want? Okay. We are doing table tipping. It's a Victorian method of communicating with the spirits. And since the seances were usually held in this room, I thought it would be a good room to do it in. We're going to have our fingertips on the table like this, and we're all going to concentrate and ask the spirits for help in tipping the table. And it's going to tip any direction, doesn't matter. We might just feel the table vibrate, and that'll be perfectly fine. And I've just asked everyone to kind of feel their own energy and get in touch with the way their own energy feels. And if everyone has done that and gotten comfortable with that, hello to anyone who is with us in this room tonight. We've been told that people would hold seances here to communicate with dear ones that have passed on. We are also trying to communicate with people who have passed on. We're trying to communicate with you. You might wonder why we're sitting here in the dark. And the reason for that is we're trying to get our other senses more in tune with what you want to show us. Now, we live in a world of metal, and you people lived in a world of wood and water and stone. Can you show us what this house sounded like when you lived here? Can you knock on the wall? Let us know what that wood sounded like? We'd also like to know what life was like for you since we're sitting here in the dark, trying to attune our other senses, could you show us what your favorite meal smelled like?
I definitely feel an older male spirit here with us.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Can you tip the table for us if you want to communicate?
I'll ask this male spirit, are you familiar with table tipping? Is that something you used to do? Understand that it takes an awful lot of energy, and you might not have that, and that's okay. But we would love to know that you're here, so please knock on the table for us. That's interesting. I just felt a tickle in my right palm. Almost made me take my hand off the table. It was so unexpected.
Can you affect the physical world to show us you're with us?
There's a noise from another room. I keep feeling darts and energy moving up my fingers.
I feel a lot of energy. It seems like they're trying to raise the energy to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You are doing so well. Thank you so much for trying for us.
We give you permission to use us to move the table.
I give you my permission, yes.
Me too.
There are so many people here who are so eager to experience the things that you did. Will you please help us experience a seance just like you did?
Someone's tugging me back in my shirt.
Thank you.
As a spiritualist, you know that we want proof of life after death. Can you move the table or manifest to prove that to us?
When you lived in this house, or when you visited this house, you were seeking proof of life after death, and now you yourself are a spirit and can communicate with us. Isn't that astounding?
They're getting colder.
Yeah, and I don't usually notice things like that.
We can feel your presence with us. Please use our energy to make contact with us.
So imagine that you're visiting this house for a seance. Can you knock on the door and someone will let you in? We've been asking you a lot of questions. Do you remember the questions that you yourself used to ask? Can you come and sit with us and ask questions the way you used to? Is that you?
That's me.
Okay.
He's like,
I'm like, what's happening? Oh my God. That's exactly what we want you to do. Just so you know. That feeling is what we're looking for, the feeling of the
did you
table.
put on the
lifting up.
table? Because it feels like it is moving.
It is moving.
Is it
But
your
it's, but
foot?
it's not my foot.
Oh, weird, because it is moving.
Is it? Yeah, can you do me a favor and just put your feet that flat on the floor?
Yeah.
Or move you back, that's fine. I know you're tall, I'm sorry. Okay,
The
yes.
table possibly, it doesn't feel like it moves though, but it was moving.
It was.
Yeah,
Like a little vibration like that.
right. That was absolutely splendid. Could you please do that again for us? Now that you've got the energy. That's wonderful. Keep it up. Keep that momentum going. I just felt it rock.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. You are doing great. I can feel it tipping a bit away from me and towards you. Oh, fantastic. You are doing so wonderful. Thank you.
There's also small vibrations going through the table.
It feels like it's bending.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can't tell you how much we appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Can you rock it back and forth?
I feel it pulsating.
So do I.
Do you still live in this house or can you leave?
That was
Moving
definite
it.
rock.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Can you leave this place? Do you like to stay in this place? I just feel like it's like bending.
He's pulling on it.
There we go.
That is a lot.
It is wiggling
Mhm.
under my fingertips. That
I
is
can see
absolutely stunning. Can you see it moving? Holy cats. It's definitely wiggling back and forth. That is just astounding.
Are you the father of the family?
Big wiggle there.
Did you lead the seances? That felt very strong.
It did.
Mm-hmm.
That was amazing.
Yeah. You have a strong energy.
Thank you so much for sharing your energy
I am
with
getting
us.
freezing. My hands are like ice.
Whoa.
Yeah, real strong. Oh, thank you. You are
That's
amazing.
insane.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Yeah.
Okay, I can feel you ramping up. Do you think you can actually lift the table? Just tip it one way or the other?
Can you?
You are doing so great. Can you tip it away from me? 1, 2, 3. It is wiggling like crazy.
Did you used to lead the seances? Wow. That's a lot. table's moving a lot. Whoa.
Oh my goodness. I had the feeling that if I opened my eyes, I could see the table
It is
rocking.
moving.
I can see it.
Wow.
And nobody's touching, nobody's feet are touching the table at all.
Oh, we cannot thank you enough. This is really a marvelous thing for us to experience. Thank you.
When you were alive, did you prove life after death? I just felt good.
Did you prove it to your own satisfaction? Did you have any experiences yourself that showed you that there was a life beyond this one? If we are talking to one of the Roffs, were you excited to have Mary back even for 100 days? Oh man, it is just gone. Yeah, the feeling isn't nearly as intense as it was.
Yeah.
But we certainly do thank you for the experience you've given us today. We are seekers of spirits, the same as you were. And we have so many more trinkets and gadgets and tools to help us. We've got recorders going, so if you say something, we'll be able to hear it later on. So you can say whatever you like. And if you come closer to the table, that gadget on the table will light up. You can help us know that you're here. Our time at the Roff home in Watseka was really quite amazing. I told John about our experiences in the front room and thanked him for the opportunity to explore his home. Well, John, thank you again so much for opening your home to us. This is really a special experience.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So how'd it go?
It was amazing. We did some table tipping in the front room where you said the seances were held, and it worked. Yeah. People could see the table moving. It was
Really?
pretty stinking amazing. Later, as I walked to the car, I told Mary thank you too. Mary, can you tell me how you felt coming back and knowing that you would spend some time with your family again? Were you excited to see them again, if only for a little while? I'll bet that was an amazing gift. If you would like to experience the Roff House for yourself, you are in luck. John and Valentino, the owners, have listed the historic home on Airbnb. For $95 a night, you can stay overnight in this gorgeous place. It's well worth it, according to the reviews. If you find yourself with a weekend free, treat yourself and call 773-949-6650 for booking information. Heck, you could even try your own table tipping. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the show. I appreciate each and every one of you. Take a moment to hit that like button if you're enjoying this, and subscribe for more awesome content. In the next episode, we're going to return to one of my favorite haunted places, Malvern Manor. And this time, we're going to spend the night. Pack your sleeping bag and your pillow for the next time we go lights out.